Hello everyone, I'm Leonard Hiebert, Chair of the Peace River Regional District. Welcome to our first quarterly update of 2025. As spring arrives in our beautiful Peace region, I'd like to connect with you directly on updates on the work we're doing at the Peace River Regional District and our plans coming up in the months. These quarterly updates are just one way we're working to keep you better informed about the decisions and projects that affect you and connect you with your regional government. Let's dive into what we've been working on and what's ahead for 2025.
Welcome to the first quarterly update of 2025 with the Peace River Regional District Board Chair Leonard Hiebert. Today we'll be reflecting on brief updates from 2024 and looking ahead to 2025. Chair Hiebert, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
All right, let's dive right in. First on the docket, congratulations on welcoming Director Reed Graham as the new electoral Area B director. Could you explain the selection process and what that means for the public?
Well, right now the election or the by-election was completed on February 22nd of 2025. So they had two candidates running. Currently Director Reed Graham and Mrs. Lehman were the two candidates at the time. The public went to the polls and elected Reed Graham as their new representative for Area B. And that was the process. And the reason we had to do a by-election, as the previous Area B director, Jordan Keeley, is now the MLA for the North.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about Director Graham's local and rural background?
I like to usually let the directors speak on their behalf, but what I can tell you, he is from Cecil Lake, so he is a local gentleman, and he does work full-time here in Fort St. John.
Wonderful. It's nice to keep it local, especially in the government.
Yes, it does, yeah.
All right. What does the transition process look like, and what are Director Graham's priority areas moving forward?
He had the advantage of being the alternate ahead of time, so he's had a bit of insight into what he needs to do going forward. And a couple of the key topics, just off the top of my head, are the water station in Rose Prairie, the North Peace Regional Park that he's been working on. And then there's also the future of Galata Creek, what that hall is going to mean, and after it's been dismantled and demolished. So those are just the top three that came to my mind. I know he's working on a lot more, but those kind of were the three right at the top of the list.
All right. How can Area B residents engage with Director Graham moving forward?
He has been holding or anticipating to hold some community roundtables or get together like he is with the Rose Prairie water station. Emailing, calling him, he's very open, easy to talk to, and he responds well.
Wonderful. That's what we like from local politicians.
Yes.
Moving on, the regional zoning bylaw.
Yes.
How will the new zoning bylaw help cut through the red tape and streamline processes?
Well, right now we have 5 bylaws, zoning bylaws throughout the region. And so what that'll do is it'll bring it into the one zoning bylaw. We'll still have the schedules for specific areas that we currently do within our current bylaws, but it'll minimize the red tape of having to do this and this and this. And so bringing them all into one, I believe, will be the way to not have to always wait for this decision, wait for that decision. You know, it comes to the board, okay, it falls in with what we're doing, it'll be done. Because now we're dealing with 5 different zoning bylaws, and then you're trying to figure out and weave your way through to make sure what, you know, the community wants is what they're asking for, or asking for is what they get.
Yeah. And can you tell us about the online and paper surveys that have been launched?
They started on March 20th and they'll be going till May 30th. And so they do have that opportunity to put in basically any input that they want at this stage. We're looking for, and you know, I've talked to some people about it. They basically said they don't want any bylaw. And then you have the other spectrum where they want everything documented to the, so we got to find that happy medium in there. And so that's what we're looking for. And basically whatever their input is what we're going to be looking at. So it doesn't matter if you're one extreme or the other, or you're happy in the middle somewhere. We're looking for all of it so that we can make an educated decision from the feedback that we get.
Good idea. And what happens after you gather initial feedback from the community? What's the next step after that?
The planning department puts it all into a draft report that'll come to the board. And then we'll review it and see where we're headed and where we're going. And This is one that's going to take a bit of a process because you're amalgamating one region into one, and so looking at that next phase, it'll be, what did we hear? What did they want to see? How does it already apply to what we're doing currently within those zones?
Okay. And how does it align with the PRD's strategic plan?
It comes back to what I read before is our role at the regional district, making sure it's a quality of life. We're seeing a lot of DVPs coming for bigger shops, bigger, setbacks because, of all the unfortunate theft that we have in the rural area. So people want to keep their belongings locked up and, it's secure. And so for all those reasons, it's right now is the good time to take a look at that. And so let's make sure that we can, it comes back to quality of life, and we have to do that to the best we can.
Okay. And how can residents participate in the process and, find information about the zoning bylaw and the survey?
And again, it goes back to, you have the opportunity to have at the office, you can call them in right now. I don't think we have a draft copy because we're still collecting all the feedback. But you can do the survey online as well if you have access to it, and it'll take you through the same. I started it yesterday just to kind of see what it looked like, and it's actually pretty simple and just looking for basic feedback. So once that comes in, then we'll have the next step, which will dig deeper into how we want the regional zoning bylaw to look.
Wonderful. And moving on to wind farm projects. I've been following you guys for a bit, so I know you guys have talked about this a lot. What updates can you share about wind farm projects in the region?
Well, currently there were two that were approved up here in the north, the Stewart Lake and the Taylor Wind Farm projects. And till now, we still don't know what the regulations are going to look like. They handed over to BCER to say, okay, you guys are permitting this. They haven't really addressed the EA process, which we're making sure they do.
Yep.
The one thing I can say, though, knowing that they're partnering with the First Nations, I have confidence that they will be making sure that the environmental part of it will always be taken care of. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the feedback we've been getting is, you're fighting the First Nations on this. It's not the First Nations we're fighting on this. It's our own government we're supposed to hold accountable to make sure that they do everything. Well, not everything, but at least communicate with us what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so I guess until they get everything in place, right now we're kind of in a hurry up and wait until they get BCER figured out, and we'll see what time will tell.
All right. And how do these projects contribute to what we were talking about before, which is regional resilience and growth?
Resiliency from the provincial side of it would be the securing of power. Growth, I can't really put that together as I can't see them committing to growth as their big projects taking up a lot of land, and taking away from growth maybe as the projects are so big. But looking forward, making sure that all residents of the piece, whether it's First Nations or private landowners, that we all we stay communicating. We have that conversation so that as these projects, because they're going to get a call for power in 26 and 28 again. Mm-hmm. So to make sure that we have those conversations and understand and how we react with each other to move forward. We don't have to disagree to get these projects going.
That's a good way to put it. What economic benefits do the wind farms bring to the region? Another tricky question.
Yeah, we don't get a whole lot in the way of taxes. It's just the base and the trunk. So there's not a whole lot other than they have to pay, I believe it's school tax, and that's it. And so my concern is that these guys are talking to landowners, and they're giving them all this big thing that they'll, as long as we're working, we'll get this. The thing that we see, a letter that we received from the province was that they go out on a per project basis and they do grants in lieu. And that letter is the first time I've heard of it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to speak too much more on it because I haven't really dug down into what that means for us in this area. And so yeah, it'll be a wait and see how everything turns out as to how it'll benefit or not the region.
All right, time will tell, basically.
Time will tell. Yeah.
What environmental considerations are being addressed, and what community feedback have you received up to this point on that?
Frustrations from our community's members as the companies are going to different places, and instead of just saying, we need 20 acres to put a tower on, they're asking for the whole quarter. And they're asking so that they don't have or so that nobody else can come in and kind of, so they have the right of way, right? So it makes it hard for me to sit back, and they're looking to kind of reserve all this land. And originally residents are coming back to me and saying they're looking for 700 to 1,000 acres. And if this is all supposed to be on private land, that cumulative effect piece is going to become so crucial. A couple of things as I was digging more into this is the ALR or the ALC, if it's on private land, they still have to give the go-ahead to make sure that that's okay with all their policies as well. Mm-hmm. And right now, because there haven't been a whole lot of wind farms put up to date, they're also feeling, they're going to be feeling their way through as, does it fall in with what, their regulations allow as well. So that was a step I wasn't aware of until I did some phone calls. So that's a good thing, because they do look after the local farmers. And, if you're taking ag land away, it'll be harder to have food security as well. So that's the other side of it.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And what's the timeline for development phases and upcoming decision points for these farms?
Once regulations are in place, BCER is still waiting for their, how are we going to march forward with this from the province. And so once they get their marching orders, they'll understand exactly what they have to do. And I'm hoping they'll take that cumulative effect piece into it, because that'll be big for when they're looking. It's no different than when they were doing oil and gas, right? The only thing is we were kind of about 30 years late in making sure we really look at that cumulative effects, and knowing that, let's not go backwards, let's go forward, and making sure that they take that into account going forward.
Mm-hmm. All right. And now we're moving on to everyone's favorite document, the budget. What major capital projects are funded in this year's budget?
The three that off the top of my head are the Dawson Creek Hospital. We're looking for a new Chetwynd landfill. And then we also have the North Peace Leisure Pool. Those are the three. We've been kind of dealing with them a lot over the last few years, and it's something that, landfill, when you talk solid waste, is always a big one, no matter how you look at it. And so for me, those are the three kind of targeted ones as to how we move forward for this year. By the time we get to budget season next year, that'll probably look a lot different.
And which areas have seen adjustments compared to previous years?
The biggest line item, which is solid waste. We were proposed to set up 2 more transfer stations, and that was taken off the board at this time to cut it back by $4 million, so that we at least had a not such a high increase in taxation. The question needs to be asked now is, are those 2 going to still stay on there, or are we going to take them off totally, because they've been bumped so many times, just to try and keep the budget where it is? And so that'll be a strategy coming out of our solid waste committee to see if they want to keep going, or if the board decides, well, if we're going to be done, we'll be done.
All right. And can you just give me an outline on the long-term financial planning strategies, principles, investment successes? Kind of what's the long term of the budget?
Just going to pull it up here. Should have done it before. I asked for some further information this morning regarding specific to the planning strategy. Mm-hmm. Currently, we don't have what they call a long-term planning strategy. It's kind of the budget is laid out, and I was hoping to print off a piece here that actually showed what it is from year to year. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, they can go online and they can print this off. It's accessible on there. It has our basic ones for 2025, our budget, and then As we're paying into the hospital this year, a big chunk of that will come off. So it looks pretty high this year, but next year, we're almost $30 million less. And so those kind of things are good to know going forward. And so we kind of have our base plan going forward. The other thing that I would like to mention is you mentioned the investment successes, and it's something that I have to really credit our finance team at the regional district. With the investments that they've made and the shuffling of money that they did at the right time, we don't have to borrow money to put into the Dawson Creek Hospital.
Nice.
And so with that, I think that's a really big plus, and I think the people need to understand that, the finance department worked really, really hard, and I'm really proud of them that we got to that point.
No, that's amazing. And how does the budget align with those regional priorities, strategic plan that we were talking about before?
And it comes back to the same as the role that we play as the regional district and quality of life. You have to make sure, we're basically told by the province we have to take care of the garbage. But then also when we have different things that come up in functions, and I think it's very important for the people to understand that just because we get all this money in, we can't just spend it where we want to. It comes in, we collect the money for a specific purpose, and that's all it can be used for. And we don't have that advantage that the municipalities have, where they can collect it and then they can disperse it as they need it. Whereas for us, every budget item we have, like solid waste is our biggest budget item, all that money we collect for solid waste, we can only use it for solid waste. We can't use it for any other function we have in the region. And so I think it aligns with whatever priority we have, right? So solid waste, we set that budget up according to what we'll be doing, with the Chetwynd landfill and looking at all those places. The hospital, we've been doing it for years, so the budget has to line up, but that'll fall under the hospital budget, not necessarily the regional district budget. So they have to fit, and it all boils back to our role as making sure they have a good quality of life in our region.
Okay. And moving on to wildfire and drought preparedness. We're approaching wildfire season now. I know we've got some prescribed burns. What preparation information is being shared through these quarterly updates?
I would like to, if we do have fires going forward, we had one that I was just made aware of, and I don't even know all the details. A small one, but it's still, we're into mid-April or getting into mid-April, and we're starting to feel that pressure again. What I can, preparation information is fire smarting, is making sure at least your property is dealt with. The province and First Nations are working with some prescribed burns, and so they'll be dealing hopefully with the masses of those, taking care of those. We've had so many fires over the last few years that there's a lot of concern I have is the deadfall that's still there and hasn't been taken out. Is that going to create more flame to the fire if we don't get those cleaned out? And so to me, that's one of the biggest things is whatever information I can bring forward as to how many fires, how we're preventing the fires, how the fires have been actioned. I'd like to have that as part of my quarterly update so that the people know they have it. But when emergencies happen, we'll be having that a lot more frequently, a lot more public information going out to see exactly what's happening.
All right. And how is the PRD coordinating with provincial agencies, neighboring communities, First Nations? How's that all going?
It's not going bad. Our prevention department, I'm going to call them because they've been doing a lot of work through the year. Just because the fires had stopped and slowed down, the meetings didn't stop. The constant communication with First Nations, how are we going to, if there's a fire, how do you want us to contact them? Like the provincial legislation that's slowly being released now through EDMA, you're seeing the collaboration piece is really, really big. And so our defense guys, they're really making sure that they know what's happening, and it's so important that the emergency services are on top of it, and they've done an amazing job till now. And those communications haven't stopped just because we've come through the winter. They've been keeping up with those contacts and communications all the way through. which is really important for the collaboration that I have a feeling we're going to hopefully not need this year, but we'll at least have access to.
Wonderful. And how can the public contact you directly with questions or concerns about these topics?
They can email me is best. I can see the question instead of if they call me. I have a tendency. I'm usually driving when they call, and so email is best. And but the first case scenario, if they need information right away, is just go to the emergency services department at the regional district. They'll have that right away. If they feel that they still want to talk to me, they can. But that is kind of my first go-to. You'll get the first-hand information from them directly. But I welcome any kind of information or questions that they have.
Wonderful. And what emergency prepared resources are available to residents at this time?
Currently, it's the Fire Smart program that we have. We've had it now 3. I think we're going into our 4th year, and we've had very good success. And so anybody can call and sign up to that program. And again, just get a hold of the regional district office, and they can get that, that implementation or that connection started so that they can get that done before it gets too far along in the summertime.
Definitely. And how can residents sign up for NEBC alerts through the PRD website? What's that?
It's the specific for any alerts that you want to get. I signed up for it a few years ago, but I signed up for everything because I want to know what's happening throughout the region. You can sign up for what you want just specific to your region, so you're not getting emails and texts and from the whole region. You do have options for just email, a phone call, or text. Those are options that whatever suits you, and we're trying to make it as user-friendly so that we can get as most people on there as possible so that they can get these alerts before it becomes an emergency and that they know it's coming.
All right, that's a good idea. And the North Winds Wellness Center, what's the current status of the center's construction?
They finished all the groundwork last fall in prepping and getting it prepped then for continuing construction this spring. So that's where it sits right now, and it's. I actually drove past there this morning and I took a look at it, and you don't have snowbanks in front of there now, so you can see the groundwork. They have put everything in base, so now they're just waiting for it to dry out enough to get the crews in.
Wonderful. And why is the center valuable and important to the community and the wider region?
It's one of its kind in Canada, and I think that's what the draw is they can do a complete system. They call it the ARCH program, and when a person comes in, they're supposed to have gone through their initial sort of dry out phase, and then after that they come into this program, and basically they stay with them right through. It's not just the 30 days and you're gone, and so that extended period of time, knowing that they have support and knowing that they will also have possibly a trades that they could also go back to. There's partnerships with the college, and there's partnerships that when they come out of this, that they have a place to go, that they feel that they can now contribute to society, they feel positive, and that they can have a less chance of going backwards. And so I'm really excited about going, and it's not just for us here, it's for the region as a whole. And even the current facility that they have people coming from all over, not just us.
Wonderful. And what services will be available?
I can't speak 100% to what
That's
the services are available, but the initial one for me is support. That's the one that I like to really hang on to, is the when a person comes in and they're dealing with something, that they have support. The opportunity, if we can do it locally for local people, is they have family close by. If they don't have family close by, how can they make it work? The support that the workers give, I think, is crucial in making sure that the services that they need, they can get when they need them. A lot of times currently the way it works is they'll go through a 30-day, 45-day, and then they have to wait another 3 months before they can get into that second phase. And that's the part that this center will close the gap. So they move from one straight into the next program. I don't know the specifics, but that's the transition, and then from there to the next phase, which is possibly, you know, getting trades training and all that, so that they can feel really good about themselves and building themselves up.
Wonderful. And what are some of the partnerships with health authorities and community organizations that are going into the center at this time?
There's quite a few, actually. And I'll name a couple of the main contributors are Northern Health, First Nations Health Authority, BC Housing. Ministry of Health was a major kind of making sure this happens. And there's a lot more like that as well. You know, Puskupi for, you know, keeping the designation of that zoning the same. For us, it's those small partnerships that'll make a big difference as well. And the college is another one, you know, for the trades training and that portion of it. So to me, it's very important that we look at the whole picture, and there's so many people involved that it's very, very important that we got to the point where they're all talking together.
Wonderful.
I think this is one project that I've ever seen with so many moving parts, and they're getting close to the end.
Perfect. Wonderful. And on that topic, what's the expected completion date, opening timeline, all of that?
The target, I'm going to say, and I don't know the exact target, but I'm going to say sometime in 2027, as they'll just be starting the building process in spring. So I'm going to say 2027, but don't quote me. I don't know exact timelines.
That's the hope.
That's the hope.
All right. Something to aim for at least.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've been doing some local government act reform at the PRD. Can you just give us a primer on the Local Government Act and kind of what's its significance?
So in 2002, the government had put into place the community charter, and it was adopted. But also within that charter, it was stated that the regional districts, or the next phase of the reform process, will expand to regional districts. And since then, we're still here. So it has been a process that's been started, and I believe there's been, since 2003 to 2022, there's been something like 160 to 170 resolutions to look at the reform of the regional districts. And we have to be careful what we wish for sometimes, because it might not go the direction we want. And so far, the communications I've attended have been positive, and just kind of looking for clarity as to how things will work. And some of that, the biggest thing that comes to a lot of board tables as I watch different meetings sometimes is the level playing field, especially when it comes to financial, you know, the weighted votes. You know, the electoral area directors don't usually have as many constituents as compared to municipalities, and so then they've got a lot more voting power in that. Taking a look at that to see, you know, are we going to leave it the same? Is that something that we need to look at? The other one that's come up now quite a bit is UNDRIP and DRIPA. How does that play into the new regional districts? How is that going to, you know, but in doing so, what about the regional districts that are already dealing with First Nations, trying to bring them in? Is reforming the Local Government Act going to now affect the work that's already been done? So we kind of, it needs to be done, but we also have to make sure that when we have input, it's the right input, so that it benefits everyone in the region as well.
Okay. And you touched on it a little bit, but I'm hoping you can expand. Why does the Act need to be reformed, and why is it that reform welcomed?
And it kind of, it feeds back to that same, the feeling of unfairness at the board table. If you have an equal number of municipal directors versus regional directors, those usually don't feel it as much, but when it swings either one way or the other way, there's a definite feel of, you know, no matter what I do, I'm going to get outvoted because, you know, they're going to do what they want to do, whichever side of the table it sits. And so I think we're looking at that for fairness. What other possibilities when we're looking for taxation, like how would that play? Is that going to get looked at, and how is that going to go going forward? Because currently the way it sits, like if the people want it, you know, then we have to set up a function, we have to do this, and we have to, you know, it's dragged out sometimes almost too long that the people forget what they had asked for in the beginning. So hopefully they're looking at a lot of these overall. For me, we haven't actually had a really hard talk at the regional district about this. We're kind of waiting for the surveys to come back and see what they put in there, and it's a long survey, but it's very, very important that every one of the directors and municipal directors as well have their input to see what the end result will be. We're nowhere near the end of it.
All right. And how is the PRD involved in the reform process, and kind of what do these reforms mean specifically for the PRD?
It'll depend what the outcome will be.
Mm-hmm.
But for us being involved in there right now is sitting at those tables when they're having. NCLJ is going to have in-person meetings. And so all the directors have that opportunity to go and talk directly with the people that are proposing these changes and what they've heard to date and that's what part of this survey is, and they're going to all the local government associations to see, did we hit the mark? Is this what we're hearing? And, just have that conversation again. And we're hoping that we, does it look like we have a better way of handling our money? Can we, how does that look forward? How does taxation look? How does having that communication with the people too? I want them to be aware that this is happening. And that's kind of why I'm glad we're talking about it today, because it's going to affect them, whatever the province will decide in the end. But having that place at the table and having that ability to speak will be very, very important.
Okay. And what specific reforms is the board advocating for, if you can tell me a bit about that?
Like I said, we haven't had that specific, but I think equality at the board table. I hear it sometimes from the municipalities that they're, things aren't working the way they should. And I hear it a lot from us EA directors that, doesn't matter what we put to the table as a good idea, it gets turned down. I can honestly say for the majority of the part, our municipal directors have been very good in asking and questioning and having those discussions before we get to the board table, so they have a better understanding of what we want. And it's sometimes, I think, us as EA directors don't always talk to our municipal counterparts to make sure they understand what we're trying to do, and it is actually a positive thing. And so that communication piece, I find with this board has improved a lot. And I think it still comes back to the equality of, rural versus urban, even though it's 4-8 right now, but it does rear its ugly head from time to time. And I think if we can do that in the act where it kind of evens it out, where everybody's equal, I think we're going to be a much better space.
Good. And touched on it a bit, but overall communication.
Mm-hmm.
What channels are available for constituent feedback from the PRD?
The best one is to always call the office and see if they can get information what they're looking for, or even talk to the staff person that they has the information that they can. You can always email me. I have no problem doing that. You can call me as well. I always take phone calls. I might be, if I'm in a meeting, but I always make a point of calling back. It's something that is very important to have that line of communication open no matter what avenue they use, whether it's walking in, whether it's emails, phone calls, or even texts if they have my number. I have to sometimes ask who they are, but it's very important that they know that they have that opportunity.
All right. And how is public feedback incorporated into regional decision making?
And I think those 3 plans we just talked about is very, very good example of how we do that. They're the climate resiliency, the growth strategy, and the zoning bylaw now, especially with, basically saying what it's going to look like. And those are the plans that get, they get put in, that's how they get put into the, or the feedback gets used going forward. And I think a lot of times from what I heard from constituents around the region is we have our input, but it doesn't feel like we're being heard. Mm-hmm. And so I think the regional district has really been taking a look at changing that avenue, is using that feedback and making sure, even though it's not being put in the plan forward, having, these are the reasons why we went this way, so that the people who had different input than where the plan is going, they at least understand why it went that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they don't feel like, as you said, like, I said this and don't
Yeah.
feel heard. You know, everyone should have their say and
Yeah.
help things move forward.
Yeah.
What is your vision for improving that two-way communication we were just talking about?
This is one setup, making
Yeah.
sure they get to know, this is what's happened in the last quarter, what we're looking forward going into the next quarter, and not be scared to give us a call. I think some people haven't always had good experience with local government, no matter what level they are, or government in general. Just getting them to understand that they can come talk to us. Every one of our directors are open to taking phone calls. Vice chair, all the other directors, give them a call. They might not have the answers, but at least we open that door that we can get the answers and then get back to them. So that two-way communication is a big, big thing. I've used it most of my life in whatever I've done, and I still believe it's very, very important to bring that. And I'll bring it up again. Our CAO has that open door policy. Every resident that comes in has a right to ask questions and get answers.
Wonderful. And how can the public attend board meetings either in person or online?
I know there's a feed that goes on online.
Through Facebook.
Through Facebook.
Yep.
And the other one is the board meetings themselves. So they can come right to Dawson Creek or Fort St. John where the board meetings being held. And another way of communication is that gallery comment period. And I invite it. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good, but I think we need to hear information coming all the time. And it's very important to me to allow them to speak so that they know they're being heard. And if it's being discussed on a topic later, a lot of times they hang around to see, the information that I spoke to, how do the rest of the directors feel? We don't discuss it in front of them, but how do they feel with the input that I've had?
Yeah. And what can you tell us about the new website launching?
Yeah, I know. Last time around, I was saying I was looking into the new year.
Yeah.
And but they're working all the kinks out to make it. And the biggest thing that I was being told, and that when I talked to them, is easy usage, easy to find things, easy to find. They don't want to be zipping around there for half an hour to find something that should take them 2 minutes. And I don't know what this means, but a 3-click policy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There is very, very top of list. And so they're making sure that no matter what item they're looking for, they can find it in 3 clicks.
Wonderful.
So I'm really looking forward to that, because I'm one of those that doesn't like spending a lot of time on a website looking for stuff. So I am really looking forward to it.
Wonderful. And will these quarterly updates continue, and what can people expect from them?
Yes, definitely. I know this is the first year, and it'll be hit and miss as to what we're going, but I want to make sure that we bring that information forward, that they understand that we're trying to be transparent. We want to bring all the information we can, and that, keep reiterating that you can come and ask questions. Mm-hmm. You can, it might not always be the answer you're looking for, but, it's better to give them the answers than not give them anything at all.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And how are you emphasizing transparent and clear public engagement strategies moving forward?
And I think that when we had the discussion around these plans, was very clear, is if we need to have more public engagement, like within communities, let's do that. For us to allow them to have input is very, very important, because if we don't, they'll say, well, this is not something we wanted. It's not what we thought we were getting. Mm-hmm. So if it means we have to hold 2 or 3 more meetings in rural communities or even in municipalities, then let's do it before we come to a decision that this is done. It'll be minimal cost at that point, as the community, we're seeing a lot more community interest in what we're doing. And so just making sure they have that avenue of transparency is very, very important.
Wonderful. And now we're going to talk a bit about your personal reflections. Are there any additional highlights other than what we talked about from the last quarter that you wanted to share?
And I kind of was thinking about this quite a bit as I was driving home from a conference last week. And one word that kept coming up during the course of the conference was trust. When I look over the last years since I've been here, since 2014, and I'm thinking, what is the biggest thing that I keep hearing is our constituents don't trust us. And so for me, the biggest thing that I can see is we're working towards that trust, and adding extra public meetings, adding extra time to have the public input will make a big thing for that trust factor to make sure that we can keep it there. But it's so true with no matter who we work with. If you think about the picture of a whole is too many times we say, well, I've communicated with you by just flipping an email. But have I?
Yeah.
And then not responding on time or not, so then they feel that trust gets broken down. And to build that trust back up with our outlying region as a whole, it's going to take work, but I think that's the avenue that I've got in my head that we need to rebuild, because I find once the constituent trusts what you're doing, explaining and moving things forward that'll benefit them, you're not going to get that that fight back, that you're not going to get those brick walls, you're still going to get that just so that everybody understands what's going on, but it will be very important to make sure that trust factor is going to be crucial going forward for that transparency piece as well.
All right. And looking ahead, what are some of the key priorities for the PRRD?
Making sure we maintain that open door policy. I've been getting, Site C, for example, I did an interview with CBC last week, Wednesday morning. The amount of responses we've got, and I'm not the only one, we've got 3 or 4 other directors that are also getting responses saying, well, I know a company that dismantles this, I know a company that does this, and so we're just flipping over the information. And if it does beg the question, how can we do this with one interview that took maybe 5 to 7 minutes and we're getting this response? What kind of advocacy or advertising did happen to try and get that out there, that this camp is for the taking? And so in the end, as long as we don't have to get it to the landfill, I think we made a bonus. And keep building our relationships with First Nations. As I'm seeing the different ministries taking that, and have you talked with First Nations? And I find that if we talk to them before we're doing projects, that they understand how we're doing it, that relationship building, when it turns into a partnership, it's a lot more easy. You can have those tough discussions and still respect each other. And I think that's where we need to keep plugging away at those relationship buildings. Those are kind of the 3 right off the top that I think we need to keep pushing for. And as long as we keep those key priorities, they tie into everything we do at the regional district.
Wonderful. And last but not least, can you share any personal growth moments you've experienced as chair during the past quarter?
I've questioned our processes sometimes. And so CAO and I were talking, and he said, well, we'll sign you up for a Robert's Rules course. And I'm going, but I should know this by now. And after taking that course, I learned a lot of stuff I didn't know, which I think strengthens me as a chair. I'm taking another course now in chairing a meeting in confidence. And so understanding what Robert's rules are and how to chair a meeting in confidence, it means you can still give people the time that they need to speak, but you also now understand what parameters they can speak within. Whereas before, I didn't quite have that full understanding. And I think for me, that's my personal growth, to make sure the chair is doing the best job they can, whether it's myself or someone else. But now I have, for myself as chair, these are the avenues I'm taking to make sure I can be the best chair I can be.
Wonderful. And that is all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me today as we continue building a strong and connected Peace River region together.